Hello and thanks for joining us. Coming up on today's Cinema Show. It's the 68th edition of the Berlin Film Festival, and movie critic Emma Jones will be joining us to give us her take on the selection.
This may very well be the most sensitive asset ever to be housed in this facility.
The Shape of Water is making waves. Guillermo del Toro's latest opus is a poetic love story between a woman and a water monster.
You don't think that's what the...
Everyone has their own truth.
And who could forget that bitter 90s rivalry between figure skaters Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding? I, Tonya, takes a look back at the biggest scandal to hit the ice. We're starting in the German capital, where one of Europe's 3 big film festivals is underway, the Berlinale. Let's cross over to our film critic, Emma Jones. Hi, Emma. Award season so far has been full of the Me Too movement. We saw black dresses at Baftas. Is there a big reaction in Berlin as well?
Yes, it's extremely difficult to go through award season and an event as big as the Berlinale with as many famous Hollywood celebrities attending and not talk about the Me Too movement. Of course, there's great interest in it. I think Berlin has a more low-key, official approach to the equality movements for women in Hollywood. There aren't so many films by women in competition here, unfortunately, but there are a couple of big ones which are getting a lot of critical acclaim. There's 3 Days in Quiberon by Emily Atif, and that is a look at Romy Schneider's life. That's been very, very well critically reviewed. And also Daughter of Mine by Laura Bispuri. That's an all-female cast, the only Italian film in competition, and that's something that's actually tipped for the big prize in Berlin this year. But every Hollywood actress, or every well-known actress, I should say, who does come into Berlin is certainly getting the questions about the Me Too movement. And given the controversy about the letter that was written by some French actresses a few weeks previously, when Isabelle Huppert arrived in town with her film Eva by Benoît Jacot, it was inevitable she was going to get art, and here's what she had to say.
I welcome everything that has come from this movement with sympathy and hope. It's been a long time coming. What was said a few months ago should have been said earlier. In fact, this is why I make films, to talk about women in a certain way. I'm personally very happy that certain things are being said in a definitive way.
Eva is screening in competition here. What are the highlights of the festival so far?
Well, talking about Eva, I think Isabelle Huppert is actually a highlight of the festival, certainly on the carpet. I'm not sure Eva is going to get the same critical acclaim as Elle, for example. This is a film made by Benoît Jacot. It's based on the 1945 novel. And in fact, it has been previously made into a film in 1962 starring Jeanne Moreau. I think the general critical reaction to Eva is that despite Huppert being luminous as usual, the story's rather silly, and the character that her co-star Gaspar Ulliel plays is rather unbelievable. However, I think in her post-Oscar nomination for Elle, Huppert can do no wrong, really, and she's certainly possibly been the biggest star in Berlin. There's close rivalry, however, if we're going to talk about big stars, between Isabelle Huppert and Robert Pattinson, who was in town earlier this week for his film Damsel. Now, we know that Robert Pattinson is in fact wanting to be an independent actor after the Twilight films, and after he worked on Good Time, he's now working with another couple of brother directors. These are the Zellner brothers, and Robert stars in Damsel, which is a comedy western. You will see him sing for the first time, should you you actually go and see the film. And he's a lovelorn, romantic cowboy troubadour who actually has a more sinister side as the film goes on. Now, a lot of critics walked out of this film within the first 20 minutes, but if you stayed, I reckon you'd have actually seen Roberts put in an excellent performance, thus possibly confirming his independent film actor credentials and not just as a Hollywood heartthrob. Another film that I really liked is actually Daughter of Mine, which I mentioned earlier, by Laura Bispuri. All-female cast, including Alba Rohrwacher. This was filmed on the island of Sardinia, and it's about a little girl's exploration of identity. Two women who are, in fact, bringing her up as their mother. And let's take a look at some of the film in action.
Angelica dice che partoriscono lontano nell'oceano e i piccoli tornano nello stesso punto da cui vengono le madri. È vero?
Sì.
Anche lei partirà e morirà tra poco.
Penso di sì, è gonfia.
Ma perché deve andare così lontano? Perché non resta qui con i piccoli? Non li vuole vedere.
Dicono che l'uomo è complicato e la natura è semplice. A volte anche la natura è complicata.
There is one film that has certainly attracted attention, and that is Utoya July 22. Tell us more.
Yes, this is certainly the news story of the Berlinale, and it's a film by the very respected Norwegian director Erik Poppe, and it is the story of how 69 young students were massacred 7 years ago by the right-wing extremist Anders Breivik on the island of Utoya near Oslo. Now, this is a real story, and it happened not so long ago, so of course a lot of controversy on whether or not the film should ever actually have been made. Let me tell you a bit about it. There's no music, there is very little editing. It's all been filmed in one take, and the killing, if I can be so blunt, lasts exactly 72 minutes, which is the exact time that the attack took on Utoya before the police managed to arrive and do something about the massacre. Now, I can't stress enough the reaction to the film. I saw it myself. I don't think I was able to speak for about an hour afterwards. I've never felt such silence in a theatre after seeing this film, and it's extremely well done, but it's going to be a very, very harrowing experience for those who choose to see it.
Now on to the new releases in France this week, and one of the most hotly anticipated is The Shape of Water. Emma, does it deserve all of its Oscar nominations?
Yes, how many Oscar nominations has The Shape of Water had? I believe it's 13. I think if you were lucky enough to see The Shape of Water by Guillermo del Toro and his wonderful imagination before all the hype started, then you were very, very lucky indeed. Because once you've seen it with all the hype about it, I'm not sure it quite lives up to expectations. It is a beautiful tale, though. Sally Hawkins plays her whimsical role gorgeously as this night shift cleaner who falls in love with a merman who's been taken prisoner at a research laboratory in the 1950s. And there are standout performances as well from Octavia Spencer, Michael Shannon and Richard Jenkins, some of whom have been nominated, of course, for Oscars as well. Let's take a closer look at The Shape of Water.
Get them out. Now move the cylinder into the compressor. Bring it here, bring it here.
Well, film lovers will know that Guillermo del Toro has an amazing imagination and quite unique vision. However, myself, watching The Shape of Water, I think that Jean-Pierre Jeunet, for example, could have done this just as well, if not better. And I think the fact it's nominated for so many Oscars might be a commentary about the kind of films that it's up in competition against and their own lack of originality, really, rather than saying that The Shape of Water is one of the most outstanding films of the last 5 or 6 years.
Now, another film in the Oscar race is I, Tonya. Emma, what did you make of it?
I really liked I, Tonya. It's a film by Craig Gillespie, and it's certainly original. You can't really put it into one genre. It's a mockumentary, there's a whodunit thriller, it's a comedy, and it also often breaks the fourth wall. It stars Margot Robbie, the Australian actress who is now catapulted into the A-list with her Oscar nomination for playing Tonya Harding, this girl from the sticks who kind of came good as a wonderful ice skating competitor, but then whose fall from grace was quite dramatically documented after an alleged an attack on her main competitor and rival, Nancy Kerrigan. The standout for me in this film is not Margot Robbie, it's Alison Janney, who's already been rewarded at the Baftas and the Globes for her performance as Tonya Harding's mother. Now, Janney has been long underrated as one of Hollywood's best character actresses, and I am so thrilled that she's finally getting recognised, and I would go and see this film for her alone and for that performance.
Thank you so much. We'll leave you with a clip of I, Tonya. Thank you again for joining us from the Berlinale. Remember our website for those of you who are watching, www.france24.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. There's more news coming up on France 24. Just stay with us.
Does someone want to just tell me to my face, you're never going to give me the scores I deserve?
This is how it's done. Some of these girls have paid their dues.
I don't give a I outskated them today.
We also judge on presentation.
Well, you know what? If you can come up with $5,000 for a costume for me, then I won't have to make one. Till then, just stay out of my face.
Maybe you're just not as good as you think. Maybe you should pick another sport.
Suck my